we can start. Okay, so let me start my fourth lecture, or the last part of my involvement in the virtual mobility at your university, and this is a topic which we remain in a third sector in sports. It should be second. And I was thinking what really topic of importance and of an interest and of ongoing my experiences in creating the European project might be of your interest. And I decided to choose a topic of performance evaluation. Performance of non-governmental organizations, different organizations, starting from a local level, from a sport club, finalizing with the National Sports Federation. And the question is how to evaluate their activity. How to evaluate their activity. But I will not talk about different schemes, you know, from a theoretical point of view. I will not be explaining, you know, different tools, how to evaluate based on the measurement tools, based on a different criteria and indicators. The only what I would like to draw your attention this afternoon to the concept of good governance, and based on this concept, what kind of tools are really developed, and based on those tools we can measure performance and we can evaluate performance of the third sector sport organizations. So just brief introduction, couple of theory slides, but again, performance evaluation is always very important managerial and political topic, because while every organization is operating on its plan, on its goals, vision, missions, and political statements and strategy, what we talked yesterday, and you know, plans for the year, the annual plans, or the plan for the week, or plan for the day, how successful we implement those plans or policy directions, we try to keep that managerial approach using evaluative methods and using different performance evaluation approaches. Again, this is very complex issue, but the importance, how to measure, what has to be measured, how to help to sport organizations in a measurement processes, and how to deal with the measurements in the future to keep organizations going on the right directions. So measurement is not just to kill organization. Okay, measurement is to find out what how we are able to follow the directions which are indicated in our plans, and how we are successful in implementing one activities and one sort of activities, and what can be done in order to make some amendments, corrections, and developments towards certain activities or some part of the activities which are not very successful in our organizations. So this is like a help tools to organizations to improve their everyday routine. So my main idea to present your organization as an open system from a general management theory. Next, to find out that general approach to the sport organization, and immediately next one to jump to the performance evaluation based on good governance, the concept of good governance, and that is practical task. Okay, so what I really love to present, usually from a general managerial perspective. So I really love that Robbins and Coulter management basics, and this is the newest 14th edition of the management book where they present organization as an open system, which proceed through the three main core stones in the activities. So every organization has certain inputs to start their activities, to proceed their activities. Every organization operates on their, as it is called, transformation processes or throughputs, where we have activities of different employees, where we have different managerial solutions, where we operate on a certain technology and operational methods. And finally, we produce some outputs, we produce some results out of our activity. So as we can see that based on the outputs, we somehow make the evaluation steps in order to get a feedback how we've been successful or not. And certainly, well, external environment is that one which influence to the activity of our organization, we wish or not, but it really exists, and different factors of external environment make the influence. So that is a general managerial approach to the activity of the organization. And my colleague, Matthew Minant, that is who made that adaptation of the general management theory model of organization activity to the sport organization for the non-for-profit sport organization performance. And this is what I really like, very concrete indications of input, throughput, and output phrase. And if I can stop for a while, pointing out that in every non-profit sport organization, we do cope with a certain financial resources and human resources and certain members or membership forms, and it varies from size. It depends from the size of the organization. We are speaking about a small organization where 10 up to 50 people could operate, or even less. We are speaking about mid-sized organizations and large organizations. It depends on a legal framework of every country. How do we count small, big, or medium organization? And physical resources where we operate with a certain facilities and certain equipments. So those are inputs which are necessary to produce any activity in our organization. So in terms of throughput, financial dimension, in terms of resource management, in terms of independence. This is Winand had in mind what kind of resources we're able to attract by our own organization activity, in terms of some generation of resources by our own, and those resources who are able to get from the government, from a public funding. Different sport programs we are operating through the activity delivery processes, external communication, internal atmosphere, process efficiency, which really leads to the certain outcomes we'll see later on. But what is very important, that in order to secure a throughput process, we should take into consideration the stability, the staff support, staff recognition, scientific support, some research or some recommendations should be taken into consideration in realization throughput process, and implementing certain plans or adopting some flexibility if it is necessary. And finally, we get some concrete results. It depends what kind of organization we're speaking about. Is it elite sport? Is it mass sport or grassroots sport organization? And we are delivered certain services to society, to members, to athletes. We are able to measure the outputs in a concrete quantitative or qualitative levels. So again, financial goal, ethical goal, safety, recreational goal, that is what is like an added value to outputs, what we are able to measure as an outcome of performance evaluation. So internal, external, again, feedback, which is usually used measuring either through the service quality satisfactory analysis, like internally inside the organization, or external when we ask, from the audience, from the general public, how they evaluate our organization and the outputs, what we're able to produce and offer in the market. So the story of the good governance in sport in general started from International Olympic Committee. But the first framework, or the first action on a worldwide, global dimension with a good governance concept was brought from the World Bank. But for sport and in sport, the first steps towards good governance was made by Olympic Committee. But there were very, very general concepts, very general approaches. And having an opportunity through a variety of cooperation among different sport organizations, and you can see one of the example of the good practices, good project practices funded by the European Commission, again through the Erasmus Plus program, the concrete tool for measurement of good governance in grassroots sport was provided. So this is a concrete publication, a concrete tool in order to measure how good governance principles are implemented at a club level. So again, as I mentioned before, we're not going to speak about measurement evaluation in general using concrete tools, but through the concept of good governance, we can identify how and if organization is implementing good governance in order to progress in their activity and to be focused on a concrete activity outcomes, which might be evaluated by different performance indicators. So my very important message is that good governance, well, it's a general, I will tell you in a minute, but what is important, what I would like to draw your attention, that there are several tools as for today developed, and the first ever tool for good governance measurement was developed for grassroots clubs. So if you, for example, is a part of the concrete sport club, you can use that tool, which is actually available on the internet, publicly available, and you can measure how good governance principles are implemented at your particular club. So the general framework of that systematic approach lies a background for that tool, concrete tool, which can be used and very much actually is promoted across Europe, and there are some studies already made with that concrete tool. So if we take content realization and controlling stages, we can find out that first of all, we should focus on the organization's ethic code. Is it exist or not? And zero tolerance plus tone from the top. What is the real situation? How the organization itself and how the administration of the organization are implementing the ethic code in their practical activity. Because usually good governance principles is a part of ethical code. Well, organizations are promoted, to create a special document towards good governance implementation, but usually it is a part of ethical code. So while if it is part of their content based on the documentary, based on the certain documents, after we are able to realize how these good governance principles are implementing in a concrete organization. Usually, there is a risk, and we should take into consideration risk analysis, why one or another principle is not implementing, due to certain reasons, due to certain risks. So risk analysis should be taken into consideration. But what we should really keep in mind in a stage of realization, that certain structure or certain concrete persons should be responsible to provide this information about good governance, to follow the processes of good governance, how they are implementing in everyday organization's activity, and finally, to communicate and educate people how to run organization effectively using good governance. So there is no ideal organizations, there is no ideal leaders. All we have some shortages, some lack of knowledge of different issues, and good governance is one of it. And this is very big, a strive, very big effort, from political level as well as organizational level, especially umbrella organizations level, where those good governance ideas and principles are really promoted to be implemented in every organization. And controlling stage, when investigation is needed, to measure, to make the measurement, and what kind of regulations under the good governance policy implementation, it depends on the country and organizations, policy, and so on and so forth. So sanctions might be given, might be not, but the point is that if organization is using public money, and performance evaluation is necessary, and good governance is necessary in order to be productive and effective and be responsible for use of a public money. This is one of the general messages out of good governance policy. The latest study, and I should say the next study or the next step, what has been provided at the European level, it was another tool created for good governance, but not for a club level, but for the federation level, for the level of the national federation. So again, today, the tool is available, and every national federation is able to evaluate the performance based on a good governance principles. So this is, we're coming to the core about what about which principles of good governance we're speaking, because if we try to Google about the concept itself, different authors reveal different principles, which some of them, they really consist the core of good governance policy in general, but some they are a little different and little are different from one author from another. It depends which approach he or she is using. But in fact, we are speaking first of all about three, or in fact about four principles. So democracy, transparency, accountability, and stakeholder involvement. To be more precise, we are under the 46 good governance dimensions and principles. Well, there are dimensions, and in each dimension there are certain principles. Okay, so sometimes there is some kind of mixture, but actually we're speaking about the same. So we're dealing, in fact, at the European level, trying to measure performance of sport federations based on a good governance using four main dimensions: transparency, democratic processes, internal accountability and control, and social responsibility. So using 46 principles in each dimension, we can easily measure the performance of sport federation. So transparency refers to an organization's reporting on its internal workings, which allows others to monitor these workings. So there are 7 principles which are formulated towards transparency measurement. We will have our task based on the transparency, but definitely I have to introduce you to the others. Democratic processes. Actually, we are talking about entail free, fair, and competitive elections, affected actors' involvement in a decision-making processes, and fair and open internal debates. So the main issue, how democratic processes are implemented in an activity of national sport organization. A third principle, third dimension, well, and democratic processes is composed with the 13 principles which has to be measured. A third dimension is internal accountability and control. We're dealing here with the finances, but not only. So it refers to both the implementation of the separation of powers in the organization's governance structure. So who is in charge for a certain level of a power, and a system of rules and procedures that ensures that the staff and officials comply with the internal rules and norms. So this is like an important issue of auditing, not only rules and procedures, but how those rules are implemented in the activity of the organization. And finally, social responsibility. Social responsibility refers to deliberately employing organizational potential and impact to have a positive effect on internal and external stakeholders and society in general. So what is the level of social responsibility of the concrete sport federation? And it composes out of 12 good governance principles. And again, using well the tool itself, we can make the measurement, performance measurement. Well, because project, okay, because project itself was initiated by the well-known at European level, at European policy level, well-known organization, Play the Game, which is created in Denmark, and Play the Game organization applied to European Commission to get a special funding for creation of this tool. And my colleague Arnaud Gerard from Belgium, he is a co-person on well, theoretical both and research and implementation of good governance at national sports organizations. So this is in front of you. There is a final report of the project, and you can see that not only tool was developed, that was only the first stage of the project, but research combining European, different countries, sport federations, performance measurement, and non-European, as for example, Brazil and a couple other countries outside Europe, they used the same tool to measure the performance of their national sport federations. So again, let me give you an example. My master student and myself, we comply and made a research, made an investigation, how good governance principles are implemented at national Lithuanian Sports Federation level, was made in the year 2015. So it's already several years ago, but we've managed to make it as a first study at national level with the 15 priority sports federations. And lately, a couple of other studies have been made. And today we can speak how this concept is appropriate and what are the concrete results, strong sides and weaknesses in the implementation of a good governance at national level for national sports federations. So again, my idea is just to introduce to you the tool, the necessity to use it as one of the progressive model for improvement of the activity of the national sports federations. So let me present you a task which is based on the transparency dimension, which involve seven principles. Every principle, because the measurement goes like that every principle combines certain number of questions. So it goes in depth research, okay? It goes in-depth insights. No, but well, due to the time limit, we will not go deeper. But you can see that every principle, in order to be measured accurately, a certain amount of questions, 7, 8, 4, 6, 3, 10, or 4, should be asked in order to have an overall overview how, in reality, a concrete principle is implemented. So we will not go into detailed analysis right now, but my idea is to present and to have a short reflection with you about each of the 7 transparency principles. Well, the question is why I decided to take transparency principle. There are 2 reasons why I decided to take it. Later on, I will talk to you about the European project, what we are implementing right now. And Lithuania as a country is responsible to provide information about transparency principles. So that was my job, my 2 years job, you know, to provide some explanation and some lectures and some text writing towards transparency. That is the first reason why transparency. The secondly, when we made a first study with the 15 priorities strategic sport federation, transparency as a good governance principle was measured in the lowest among the other principles. So we are really having some shortages, some weaknesses while implementing this principle. I do hope that situation nowadays has been changed, and research is needed to be repeated in order to find out some I do expect some positive changes. But this is my very subjective presumption, and well, we need some research. We need some updated research or longitudinal research, if you wish. Okay, so if someone would like to react to my now explanations and to give some remarks or some comments, you are more than welcome. But my idea is, based with this task, each of you who are following my lecture right now, to present yourself or to connect yourself with a concrete organization. I do hope that you are athlete or participant or spectator or whatever of a concrete sport, which is represented by a concrete sport organization. Okay, well, in the end of the day, it might be even university, you know, so you can take your university as an example, but this is not for university performance measurement. This is a measurement for national sport federations. Ideally, certain sport federation should be taken as an example, but it could be, you know, the other association or even sport club, just to have an example. So if you take a concrete sport federation, you should evaluate their performance while implementing transparency through the following principles. This is not very difficult, in fact. You can say that this is, well, simple, but in the end, it is not very simple when you go in depth. But let us have a look. So the first transparency principle is how and if it is that organization publishes its statute or constitution, it depends, internal regulations, organization chart, sport rules, and multi-annual policy plan on its website. So this is quite easy. You just open organization website and you have to check if all those necessary, well, documentary papers are on a place. Again, 8 in-depth questions, they somehow try to reveal more detailed insights, but this is not for today. This is not for today. So you open and you see if it is statute, constitution, internal regulations, organizational chart, sport rules, and multi-annual policy plan exists on the website. So every internal or external visitor of the organization web page should find this information. If it is in place, everything is fine. The first transparency principle is implemented. And again, some part might be evident, it is easy to find, some part it is not, possibly there is no policy plan, but there is organizational chart available and so on. So again, certain level of implementation of that principle should be measured. Okay. Second, the organization publishes the agenda and minutes of its General Assembly meeting on its website. Okay, so every year organization, National Sport Federation, has a General Assembly or annual meeting. It depends how they call it. But organization publishes the agenda. Well, there is a certain amount of days according to the statute when organization should make it publicly available, and minutes after the General Assembly, after the annual meeting. That should be placed in a website of the National Sport Organization. What I would like to add to this point, that organizations now, they time to time, and it depends on the organization, again, size and scope and the role they play with a concrete sport, how the sport is popular, and so on and so forth. I'm speaking about the fact that when we've been doing the research, and Basketball Federation was one of our informants. So when we've been looking for the minutes, are they really publishing the minutes of the annual meeting of the General Assembly? We didn't find the minutes. And when I asked, where are the minutes? How we should find out what kind of issues were discussed and what kind of solutions were adopted and accepted by the members of the organization, the answer was very, very short and very clear, that there is no minutes anymore. All General Assembly is recorded and you can find it on a platform. And definitely, I found out on the webpage of the Federation that minutes of the last General Assembly, there is a link to the YouTube channel, and you can follow, I don't know, 4 or 5 hours meeting, and you can go item by item to each question what has been discussed. Well, this is a decision of the organization, but well, minutes are not a record of the assembly. But they say, okay, we decided, you know, to be even more transparent than it's needed. Everything is recorded and publicly available. Okay. So a third principle, the organization publishes board decisions on its website. So according to the statute, organization board, yeah, meets every quarter, every second month, and if it is necessary, the board might be collected due to certain issues of emergency and so on. So in spite of that, all board decisions should be available publicly, and this is again the reflection of the transparency principle in general. The next principle concerns an information about board member. So usually a board is composed from certain amount of members. Again, it depends on the size of the organization. So it should be, well, or usually it is 8, 12 persons, might be less, might be more, but usually there is such an amount of persons. And the information about each board member, about his or she's professional career, should be available on the website. So again, internal environment or members of the federation or external environment, general public should be aware who is on a top level management line of the National Sport Federation. Well, in fact, that's why we're calling national, and that is why people are elected in the board for a certain period of time, for certain functions to be played, for certain responsibilities to be taken, and society should be aware about every person who is serving on a voluntary basis, who is serving to certain tasks and functions dedicated to him concretely and to the whole organization. Next principle is that the organization publishes information about its members, athletes, and clubs on its website. Again, it depends on the size of the organization, and when I mentioned you about the Basketball Federation in Lithuania, that they have more than 130 members. So about each member, to provide information, possibly it's impossible, but the table with the head of the name of the head of the organization, the contact details, and the web page direction should be indicated. So if anyone is willing to know more, to get into the contact with a member of the organization, it shouldn't be a problem to find the proper organization or proper person who is in charge for the activity of that particular organization. Well, federation decides what athletes or what club possibly to highlight. It depends, you know, when, well, there are stars or heroes, or there are clubs which are rich by the history or results or whatever. It's up to the board decision of the organization to decide how they are going to design providing the information, but it is not necessary to list members, that's all. Now, appropriate information about each member should be provided by the national organization. The sixth principle, that organization publishes annual report, including financial statements. It means that annual report and certain amount of years, again, it's under the discussion, the 5 years, the 10 years reports should be presented on the web page of the Federation. Annual report with the financial statements. That is a fact when everyone can follow how successfully organization is implementing their strategy. In fact, how in general I implement, because the success we need to have a special measurement, how successfully. But in fact, how organization is developing according to their goals, according to their well, internal rules, and what is well, some kind of critical perception or reflection that organization could you know be able to make some kind of self-assessment, what has been improved in the activities, what has been successful, what has been not very successful, and needs some amendments, and so on and so forth. So by the fact, the annual report should be available for public in general. And finally, the seventh principle, transparency principle, is when organizations should publish regulations and reports on remuneration of its members and management staff on the website. Well, this is a critical issue. This is a critical issue. Is organization ready for that to open the remuneration system to wider public? Possibly, well, there are different you know, behaviors of the organization, how they act. Sometimes they open that information just for internal use, just for members. Sometimes they open for public, but not for all staff members of the organization, but mainly for the leaders, but not for operational staff. Again, it depends. but this is really important aspect of the transparency of the organization. So if you was able to take, you know, the piece of paper and make like a checklist, which one out of the 7 principles were in your personal measurement were implemented, or which principle is the most implemented, you know, that could give us a nice discussion to reflect. So 7 principles: statutes, agenda, decision, board members, information about members, annual report, and remuneration system. So 7 transparency principles should compose one of the 4 good governance principle implementation at the level of national sport federation. Okay, so if anyone is willing to reflect what has been said right now. If not, it will be a time for discussion later on. But if someone is willing, possibly because it is a recordable material, possibly let us find a time after my presentation, because a couple of slides and I am finishing. Okay. So this is a project. The project with the acronym GREFORM, and the full title of the project is Good Governance Enhancement through E-Learning for Sport Volunteer Board Members. GREFORM. Yeah. So the aim of the project is to increase the capabilities and knowledge of volunteer board members in sport organizations by providing online and research-informed education on good governance in sport. So the idea is to create a learning platform about each of 4 good governance dimensions, principles, where National Sport Federation board members can enter, learn, study, and take into consideration while implementing good governance in their respective national sports organizations. So in fact, project had to be finished last year. Due to pandemic, we have some extension, but the material is already prepared, and material will be recorded lectures and written material and self-assessment tests where you can use question answers and check yourself, your knowledge. So by the end of September, project is going to be finished, and the platform will be available. It will be available not only for national sport federations. The platform will be available for general public as well. So what it will be needed, just to put your name, your possibly contact details, your organization, in order for us to find out who is using that material, what is prepared through the a project funded by European Commission. And well, the coordination of all that activity goes to European, coordinator of the project, Cyprus Sport Organization. This is a very, very good example of initiative which arrived not from the university sector, not from the government, but national sport organization, Cyprus Sport Organization. They made proactive initiative to create this project. They were successful of getting funding, and we countries, universities and professional associations were helping in realizing the main goals, main aims of the project. So the material will be available in 4 languages, 4 project partners languages. So English, definitely, Italian, Lithuanian, Greek language, and Belgian. So sorry, not Ukrainian, but this could be like a transfer of knowledge to your country if it might be necessary. Again, different ideas, different amendments could be taken into consideration. But this is one of the very concrete outcome of very successful European investment, if I can say, and people serving as volunteers in different national sport organizations. They will be able to obtain knowledge and skills on good governance without any excuses that they are not provided with information or tools. Everything will be publicly available. So I would like to finish my lecture, the last lecture, and my involvement with Erasmus virtual mobility. The only I can say again, my gratitude to the university, to the Olena, and I do hope that we will have a short or long discussion right now, and it was my my pleasure to stay with you, to communicate a little bit with you, and my contact details, you can write me, you can contact me anytime. And as I mentioned in the beginning of my presentation of yesterday, this year we open our master degree program in English. So for those who would like to make Erasmus mobility, Erasmus exchange, again, both students and teachers, and those who possibly would like to come for studies in the future, you are more than welcome to keep contact, to keep cooperation, and create a nice and bright future. Thank you for your attention, and I am finishing the lecture, but will stay for the time as much as it will be necessary. Thank you once again.